Street parking. One of the great nightmares. Everything about it sucks. Finding a spot, parallel parking, ceding endless miles of public space to store private vehicles that choke us to death. It's bad. But in Chicago, much like winter and local liquor, it's somehow even worse. That's because of this, the Chicago parking meter deal. An act of city government self-sabotage so stupid that it's almost inspiring. The basics go like this. Mayor Richard M. Daley gave a private company control over and revenue from all of Chicago's 36,000 parking meters, or 118,000 parking feet for our American audience. In exchange, the company fronted the city $1.16 billion. But the deal's totally lopsided terms have created a deep dish of financial and political trouble for the city, its meters, and its streets. Trouble that won't stop until 2083, which is so far away it sounds less like a year and more like a PIN number. But not my PIN number or anything. Shut up. To understand why America's third largest city made America's first largest parking meter mistake, we must first travel back in time. So grab your pre-ironic fedora and your Yes We Can bumper sticker because we're headed to Chicago 2008. What's that smell? Nope, it's not the Blummer Chocolate Factory, it's recession. We're in the depths of the financial crisis, and Chicago's running up a huge budget deficit. Mayor Dick doesn't want to raise property taxes, so to make ends meet, he does what any of us would do. Put on the best dang talent show this town's ever seen. No, wait, not that. He starts selling stuff. Which isn't entirely new. He got $1.83 billion to privatize the Chicago Skyway 3 years ago, and a year later, he traded the family's only cow for a magic bean. Now, I don't have ample enough time or smart enough writers to scratch the surface of Chicago politics, but with Daley desperate to plug up the budget, he was able to push a deal to privatize the parking meters through city council at turbo mega speed. Morgan Stanley, Allianz Capital Partners, and the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi came together to form Chicago Parking Meters LLC, which got its lease rubber stamped without any independent studies or a public comment period. And even though the city's aldermen only got 2 days to read over the lease before voting on it, they approved it 40-5. Since then, those aldermen have been criticized for being, quote, less than curious about the deal and doing, quote, due diligence so cursory as to not deserve the name, which is about as mean as criticism gets in the Midwest. Here's what they missed. First off, the price was too low. Chicago parking meters recouped their investment within a decade and have already racked up millions in profit on top with 60 more years to go. One pack of nerds estimates that those original investors could make over $9.5 billion off this deal by the time the lease expires, assuming money still exists by 2083 and we're not all just fistfighting for water. That's pretty much all money Chicago could have had for infrastructure projects or building the Beam 2 or whatever, but instead it's headed to Wall Street. One of the reasons CPM is raking in such fat stacks is that the deal, along with selling the meters, also raised their prices. From 25 cents an hour to $1, quadrupling how much revenue each one could generate in an instant, with further increases promised in each of the first 5 years. And while the city technically retained control over prices after that, in practice they have to at least keep up with inflation. That's thanks to another part of the deal, which essentially requires the city to pay quarterly apology money for anything it does that might decrease CPM's delicious profits. Here's the math. Every 3 months, the city pays CPM the lost revenues from any meters they put out of service. So if they shut down a street for construction or a festival or something, they pay CPM all the money those spots could have made on those days they were closed. That's in addition to the true-up, which is a bit more complicated, but is basically a calculation of how much value the city has added or subtracted to the system since CPM took it over. If they've made it less valuable by not raising prices with inflation or restricting hours, they owe CPM the hypothetical revenue they've taken away. But if the city happens to make the system more valuable by adding meters or raising prices, CPM doesn't pay them back for that. Well, they do, but only as credits they can use to pay future true-ups. And if they get $5 million in credits, they get to cash it out as a treat. This is possibly the most lopsided part of the whole deal. The investors made an investment, and the investee is on the hook to make sure it was a good one. Where's the fun in that? The whole point of investing is the risk that you can lose everything dumping your money on a pack of clowns. But still, Chicago, in true pack of clowns form, has already paid CPM over $75 million in true-ups since signing the deal. And if the payments weren't bad enough, all those terms also incentivize the city to piss off its residents by gouging prices, adding meters, and limiting the amount of spaces they block off for necessary repairs or public events. It's also created a major barrier to any kind of street reform. If Chicago wants to put a bike lane or some restaurant seating in a currently metered space, they have to pay a bunch of outside investors 60 years of lost revenue for the privilege. Chicagoans have tried to fight back. A group of motorists filed a lawsuit claiming CPM had an illegal monopoly over Chicago's metered parking, but the courts threw out the case twice on the grounds that even though the deal was dumb deals are perfectly legal, which I guess we knew already. At the end of the day, Chicago's parking meter snafu is a classic American story. Wall Street causes a financial crisis, government bails them out, government struggles in the financial crisis, government has to take money from Wall Street profits off of government property for 75 years, normal people pay $7 an hour to watch their cars freeze over on the street, and they all live happily ever after. Or something. Okay, so Chicago's parking meter lease was a bad deal. But you know what's a good deal? A subscription to this video's sponsor, Trade Coffee. Because nowadays, a cup of cafe coffee is like over $8, sometimes even before tax and tip. And while I always tell myself I'm not gonna pay that, if all I've got at home is boring grocery store coffee, I cave almost every time. But with Trade, that's not a problem. They send bags of delicious, sustainably sourced coffee right to my door, so I can brew myself a cafe quality cup at home. No tax or tip needed. They have hundreds of roasts to choose from, all coming roasted to order from some of the country's top indie roasters. Like, I just got this one, Deep Disco from Gimme Coffee in Ithaca, which as usual I chose because of the name, but ended up absolutely loving. So if you're done with all the extra expense and single-use plastic of the coffee shop, it's time to upgrade your morning routine. Right now, Trade is offering our viewers a free bag of coffee with any subscription at drinktrade.com/HAI, so sign up today.